This is the renowned Atari 2600, and it's actually one of my favourite consoles because, to me, or at least to many people, it's a piece of history. It's one of the first consoles that implemented the interchangeable cartridge system, which meant you could buy the console and play however many games you liked, as many as were out there. So look at that, I just put it in there. Ghostbusters, not a very good game, but if you have a good game, you could just slide it in there and play it. The unit I've got is a little bit beaten up because I bought this from a car boot for about £2.50. I suppose that's about $4. I didn't expect it to work, but actually it did. I had to fit my own power adapter, but aside from that, it works perfectly. So this is the newer version of the Atari 2600. There is actually an older version with wood grain along the front, which does look a lot nicer, but that'll set you back quite a bit. Obviously, the older the unit is, the less likely it is to work. But there's a huge fan base out there for this console, and there's a good reason why. It's well built, unlike modern consoles like the Xbox 360, where you'd have to send up for a repair within about 2 years. The newer Xbox 360 actually probably took its idea from the Atari consoles because, as I've mentioned, they released the older Atari and then invested in a new one, a smaller model that was a bit more reliable. But you can find working older models, but I like this one. So what you've got on the console here is a reset button, obviously resets the console, a select button, which is usually used for selecting game modes, colour or black and white, which is pretty self-explanatory, but you wouldn't really use that nowadays, and on and off, which is standard. You've also got these switches on the back, which is difficulty A and B. You didn't really have in-game menus setting the difficulty then, so these were quite useful. The only thing I've really noticed these doing is speeding up gameplay, as in enemies move faster and stuff like that. But I don't know, I just usually leave them alone and play the game how it is. So that's the unit itself, and I've just got an Xbox here to compare sizes. So this is an Xbox 360 in comparison with the Atari. Not very similar in size, as you can see. The Atari's a lot thinner, and well, mostly because it doesn't require any cooling or anything like that. It doesn't have a hard disk. You can't save games, but that's not really a drawback because most of the releases for this console were arcade based, and arcade games, to me at least, are more fun. So quick comparison of the Xbox and the Atari. Subtle jump cut. Okay, so as you can see on the front of the Atari, we actually have what seems to be more functionality. I'll just throw it around a bit and that'll help. You know, you've got a lot more buttons, it seems more complex, but on the Atari controller itself you don't have as many buttons on the 360 controller, which, you know, has your menu button and your all the rest of it. Main difference we can see here is that there are no controller ports for the 360, and that's because the controllers on the 360, as you probably know, are wireless. However, back in the 70s and 80s, Atari actually developed a wireless controller for the Atari 2600, so it's not all that new. I suppose nowadays it's probably, you know, a bit more well used because it's cheaper than it was, but still the Atari had that going for it at the time, and I think that's important to remember. Another thing with the Xbox, you have a USB slot just here, and really, I mean, the only thing you use that for is charging up your controller or listening to music. With the Atari you don't get that, but you know, you can just put on your tape cassette deck, listen to any song you want while you play your Atari. I don't find it that much more useful to have USB ports, but you know, that's just me. So that's a comparison. The only major advantage the Xbox has over the Atari, in my opinion, is the disc tray, and when that's out you can rest your drink on it or something, all that kind of stuff. So that's really the only advantage it has. I mean, if I had to choose between these two consoles, I would probably pick the Atari. It's up to you what you want to buy. You know, the Xbox is what, £200 or $300, and the Atari is £2.50 or $4, so it's up to you. Advantage to having this fabulous console is the library of games. It's actually bigger currently than the Xbox 360 library, and you'd have thought that had the most games at the moment. I mean, games are still being developed today. This console came out 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and they're still making games. Halo has just been produced for the 2600. The developer invested his time in making Halo for this console. It actually is pretty good. So here's some examples of cartridges. Here we have Ghostbusters, which is just a plain text and rectangular cartridge. They're not all this boring, because then you get games like Demons to Diamonds, which I'm unable to play currently because I don't have the paddle controllers, but I will be investing in those because this game looks awesome. And then you get these textured cartridges like Reactor, which is a terrible game but lovely art, worth having just for the cartridge. So, one of the questions I often get asked is, will my Atari work with a modern television? So, what you do, you hook up your Atari, you plug in the RF cable, and you plug in your controller, preferably one not this ugly, but it came for free with this console, so I can't complain. Another thing about the Atari is that you can get lots of third-party controllers. A Sega Mega Drive controller will work with the Atari. That's how diverse it is. This one's particularly ugly and chewed, but it'll do. I have everything set up here. The RF cable's in. My cartridge has been loaded. Reactor, not very good. It's set to black and white. Let's turn it on. Turn on the television. And the first thing you'll notice is that you haven't yet tuned it in. So we're going to tune it with the tuning dial till we find our Atari. Oh, there you go. Okay, I'm going to grab my controller, press reset, and play some Reactor. Yeah. Oh god. This game is not very good. The aim of the game is to bounce these balls against the wall, so you may as well have a cup and ball. It's not very amusing. There you go, I got one. Well, that's quite enough of that. So yes, your Atari will work with a modern television. Thanks for watching.